Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Finn Finnegan has always taken pride in his ability to read people. As a doctor, he taught himself to spot minor changes in posture, transient changes in eye contact, and the way a voice tightens when someone is holding anything back. Those insights helped him in emergency rooms and operation rooms. They are about to serve him under even less comfortable conditions at home. Finn begins to suspect that something about Steffy's behavior no longer fits the tale they have both been selling in the weeks following the Monaco incident and the tenuous reunion that followed. The more he watches, the wider the gaps become. Eventually, his suspicion turns to certainty, and the reality he discovers will change everything he thought he knew about the woman he married. Starts with minor discrepancies. Steffy has always been straightforward, even ruthlessly so. After returning from Monaco, she enabled Finn to apologize profusely for concealing Sheila's presence, even admitting that her own reaction may have been excessive. She discussed faults and mutual forgiveness. However, as the chat progressed near the night she flew home alone, her responses became hazy. She acknowledged drinking with Carter at Forrester Creations, but specifics were kept to a minimum. Finn initially accepted the outline because he desperately wanted to believe the issue was over. He was more concerned with reuniting his marriage than with forensic accuracy. The willingness to go beyond insufficient explanations is what allows distrust to build. The first big crack occurs when Steffy reacts to Carter. They used to move around the office with ease and professionalism. Now there is a new stiffness. Meetings that were formerly lengthy come to an abrupt finish. Shared jokes fall flat. When Carter walks into a room, Steffy's posture shifts in ways Finn can't quite describe. Shoulders slightly tighter, smile a little too bright. Finn notices because he has spent months analyzing his wife's expression for indications that she still trusts him. The same observant behavior that once helped him soothe her now works against the story they both like. He begins to follow the routine. Carter avoids being close Steffy when Finn is present. Steffy finds excuses to leave the room while the three of them are together. The choreography is far too consistent to be accidental. Finn tries to dismiss his feelings. He tells himself that the strain stems from the Sheila crisis. Steffy is still dealing with the fear that her husband prioritized his birth mother's sentiments over her safety. Carter is still trying to reconnect with Daphne following her dramatic departure and return. Two persons under pressure can appear guilty without actually being guilty. However, the rationalizations become increasingly thin with each passing day. Steffy begins declining invites that would put the four of them, Finn, Steffy, Carter and Daphne, in the same social setting. She cites employment, children and tiredness. The excuses are plausible. The frequency is not. Finn's suspicions grow when he overhears a portion of a discussion he was not supposed to hear. He arrives at Forrester Creations early one afternoon and hears the finish of a conversation between Steffy and Carter in a side hallway. The words themselves are ordinary, something about timetables and a missed call, but the tone is hurried and low, and the body language is isolated from the rest of the floor. When they spot him, they both react too hastily with informal welcomes. Steffy's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Carter's handshake is half a second too lengthy, as if he is functioning normally. Finn files the moment away. Doctors learn to believe data that does not follow the expected trend. At home, the changes are subtler but more personal. Steffy has always been physically affectionate once the day's defenses are down. There are nights when she turns away a little earlier, when the discussion about the children's schedules becomes a comfortable barrier to deeper conversation. She still says the correct things about wanting to go forward and being grateful Finn returned ready to fight for them. The wording is correct. The emotional temperature beneath them is lower than it should be following a good reconciliation. Finn finds himself cataloging the differences in the same way he once did for patient symptoms. During important conversations, people make less eye contact. When discussing the Monaco vacation, there is a new propensity to divert the subject. She is almost reflexively possessive of her phone. The phone develops its own sense of discomfort. Steffy has never been secretive about her devices. After the affair, Finn notices her shutting the screen more rapidly when he enters a room. He doesn't snoop yet, but the conduct registers. When combined with the office tension and the deliberate omissions in her stories, it creates a picture he can't ignore. He begins recreating the timeline with clinical precision. Steffy left Monaco after throwing rings at him. She flew commercially. She got to Los Angeles hours before he did. She spent the first night at Forrester Creations with Carter, both of whom had recently been abandoned by their marriages and were drinking. According to the official story, they chatted, sobbed, and then went home separately. The developing account is that something more permanent occurred in that office, and Steffy has been dealing with the ramifications ever since. Finn's training works against him in this situation. He is accustomed to accumulating evidence before reaching conclusions. In medicine, a premature diagnosis can be harmful to a patient. In marriage, the same caution can appear as intentional blindness. He waits. He is watching. He asks precisely framed questions, and Steffy responds with practiced smoothness. Each smooth answer widens the gap between them. The man who previously believed his wife was completely transparent now lives with a carefully edited version of her. The breaking point is reached through a combination of accident and persistence. Finn stays late at the hospital one evening and arrives home to find Steffy fast sleeping. Her phone lays on the nightstand, its screen still unlocked from a recent check. Carter's notification lights briefly before dimming. Finn doesn't open the message. He does not have to. The mere fact of a late-night text from the man Steffy has been deliberately avoiding is enough to raise suspicion and prompt an active inquiry. The next day, he starts recreating the timeline more aggressively. He goes over flight records in his head, calculates the hours she spent alone in Los Angeles, and recalls the exact words she used when she first described that night. The gaps are no longer little. They're structural. He confronts her at the Cliff House on a calm afternoon while the kids are with Taylor. The chat begins with the same cautious tone that he adopts when delivering unpleasant news to a patient's family. He informs her he's observed the changes. He begins by listing the inconsistencies without accusation, the stiff encounters with Carter, the ambiguous responses, the locked phone, the way she flinches when specific dates are discussed. Steffy attempts the same deflection that has been effective for weeks. Finn does not allow it. He prepared too thoroughly. He leads her through the evening she returned from Monaco, the drinking, the emotional vulnerability they were both experiencing, the empty office, and the hours that remain unaccounted for. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply won't accept the incomplete story any longer. The confession, when it comes, is not dramatic in the theatrical sense. There are no shouting matches or thrown objects. Steffy takes a firm seat on the sofa edge and stares at the floor for an extended period of time. Then she gives him the truth in tired, lifeless terms. They drank. They discussed the marriages they believed were ending. The conversation turned into contact. The interaction turned into a night neither of them had intended, which both of them regretted immediately. They decided in the morning light that it would never be discussed again. She tried telling him more than once. He apologized every time he interrupted, and she let it stand since the alternative was unimaginable. Finn listens without interfering. The clinical part of his mind organizes the knowledge, while the rest of him absorbs it. The woman who flung her wedding rings at him over a lesser secret has been carrying a much bigger one. The spouse who expected perfect honesty about Sheila has been selectively honest about Carter. Before he boarded the plane home from Monaco, the marriage he had been working to mend was already in jeopardy. Every apology he made, every promise he made, and every night he spent feeling they were climbing out of the problem together is now viewed in a new perspective. The immediate aftermath is silence. Finn does not storm out. He does not demand that she go. He simply stands, walks to the window overlooking the sea, and sits there till the afternoon light changes. When he returns, he asks the practical questions first, like a doctor would when emotion threatens to overtake process. Was there a probability of pregnancy? Has she visited a doctor? Does Carter realize that Finn now knows? Steffy's responses are precise and constrained. No pregnancy. She has been cautious. Carter is unaware that the secret has been broken. The therapeutic discussion provides them just a few minutes of framework before the greater emotional reality comes. What follows is a sequence of confrontations that occur over several days. Finn goes through stages that should be familiar to anyone who has seen a long-running daytime soap. There is a cold inventory of all interactions since the night in question. Every sweet moment they enjoyed following his return has been reframed as performances based on inadequate information. There is rage that emerges not as shouting, but as a complete withdrawal, and Steffy begins to question if the marriage can withstand the silence. He sleeps in the guest room. He responds to her questions about logistics and the children with the same controlled tone that he uses at work. The warmth that formerly distinguished their private language is now lacking. Carter discovers the secret when Finn appears at Forrester Creations and asks a private conversation. The meeting is brief, but devastating in its restraint. Finn does not make melodramatic threats or accusations. He outlines the facts as he understands them, points out that both men are married to women who deserve better, and emphasizes that the professional relationship will only continue under the strictest conditions. Carter, who is already overwhelmed by his own guilt and the weak state of his marriage to Daphne, has little defense to offer. The two men leave the room knowing that the old ease between them is over. Steffy attempts in the days that follow to explain the background that led to the night, the idea that her marriage was already ended, the shared anguish, the booze, the instant collapse of judgment. Finn hears the explanations. He does not accept them as mitigation. In his view, the context explains how the betrayal transpired. It does not remove the choice to conceal it while he asked for forgiveness. The distinction becomes the new fault line in their marriage. Steffy wants to go forward from a shared knowledge of human vulnerability. Finn wonders if any kind of forward is still feasible after the foundation has been so totally damaged. The children feel the shift even if they cannot name it. Kelly, old enough to sense adult tension, grows quieter at the dinner table. Hayes clutches more securely during bedtime. Steffy and Finn maintain the external structure of parenting while the private architecture of their partnership continues to disintegrate. Friends and relatives begin to notice the shift. Taylor poses questions that Steffy cannot fully answer. Ridge notices the new gap between his daughter and son-in-law and develops his own assumptions. Daphne, although uninformed of the entire breadth of what happened, realizes that something has permanently altered the dynamic between the two spouses. What makes the discovery particularly toxic is the time. Finn spent the days after Monaco building a tale of redemption. He believed that if he could prove his loyalty, remove Sheila from the equation, and exhibit genuine change, the marriage could revive. He now recognizes that the recovery was predicated on a flawed premise. Steffy was not simply a wronged wife receiving an apology. She was involved in a parallel betrayal and chose silence as a survival strategy. The knowledge causes Finn to confront not just her actions but his own propensity to accept imperfect realities when they fit his desire for reconciliation. In the greater canvas of the bold and the beautiful, the moment Finn discovers the truth works as a pivot. The plot that began with a drunken night of comfort and a common decision to conceal the evidence now becomes a story about the cost of that burial. Suspicion, once established, was tough to eradicate. The meticulous handling of minutiae that Steffy and Carter practiced could not withstand sustained attention from a guy trained to identify what does not fit. The truth, when it finally surfaces, does not arrive as a single dramatic expose, but as the inevitable result of compounded tiny discrepancies that Finn could no longer ignore. The marriage that remains is unrecognizable from the one that existed before Monaco. Whether it can be constructed from this new ground is the question that will drive the next chapter. Finn has the facts. Steffy has the regret. Carter has the collateral damage of a secret that refused to stay concealed. The children have two parents who are suddenly strangers to each other in ways that no amount of skillful parenting can totally disguise. The finding does not finish the story. It merely removes the last layer of pre-Tennessee and compels every character involved to decide what, if anything, can be salvaged from the ruins of broken vows and carefully maintained lies. Finn stood in the doorway of the cliff house, the ocean air blowing the faint aroma of salt and distant wildfires through the open windows. The late afternoon sun illuminated the living room in yellow and amber tones, but it did nothing to warm the frigid space between him and Steffy. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, wedding bands still removed from her finger. He had returned from Monaco resolved to fix what Sheila's shadow had broken. He had rehearsed every apology on the long ride home, every pledge that his mother would never again come between them. Yet something in Steffy's quiet felt heavier than fury, felt like remorse. He crossed the room gently, crouching in front of her the way he had so many times before when their world threatened to break. "Steffy," he murmured, his tone steady yet soft. "I know I failed you. I kept Sheila's presence a secret because I thought I could manage it. I was mistaken. From this moment forward she is shut off. Completely. No more chances. No more excuses. You and the kids are my entire world." Steffy nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on a point somewhere past his shoulder. "I believe you mean that," she muttered. "I do." The words lacked the fury he expected. There was no burst of relief, no rush into his arms. Instead, she stood abruptly and hurried toward the kitchen, claiming to need water. Finn watched her walk, noting the tiny trembling in her hands as she filled a glass. She drank too hastily, then set the glass down with more force than required. Over the next 2 days the pattern remained. Steffy glided through their shared surroundings like a woman walking on thin ice. She answered his inquiries with cautious precision, delivered smiles that never quite reached her eyes, and found reasons to leave the room if the talk grew intimate. When he grabbed for her hand during breakfast, she let him hold it for a brief period before gently drawing it to check on Hayes. When he suggested they discuss more about the future, she claimed a sudden headache and withdrew to the bedroom. Finn told himself it was residual pain from Monaco. The natural reaction of discovering her husband had hidden a secret concerning the lady who had once nearly murdered them both. But the rationalizations grew thinner each time he saw her glancing at her phone with an expression he could not define. On the third morning he found her in the nursery, standing over Hayes's cot even though the baby was with Kelly and the nanny downstairs. She was mumbling something under her breath, something he could not catch. When she noticed him she startled, one hand shooting to her chest. "You scared me," she responded, attempting a laugh. "I didn't mean to." Finn went closer. "You've been distant. I understand if you still need time, but I need you to talk to me. Whatever it is, we confront it together." Steffy's gaze flickered toward the window. "It is nothing. Just adapting." Everything occurred so fast. He waited, hoping she would expand. She didn't. Instead, she brushed past him, murmuring about stopping by Forrester Creations. Finn let her go, but the discomfort spread deeper into his chest. He has years of experience reading people in exam rooms and emergency rooms. He could tell when someone was holding something back. Steffy was carrying something large. That afternoon, he drove to the office under the premise of checking a patient's chart. In essence, he wanted to see her in her element, to monitor whether the same careful distancing accompanied her into the business. He found her in Carter's office. The door was partially open. Carter stood near the desk, speaking in low tones. Steffy sat across from him, her stance tight. Finn could not hear the words, but he noticed the way her shoulders tightened when Carter leaned in, the way she quickly closed her eyes as if bracing against something. When she noticed Finn in the corridor, she rose swiftly, adjusting her skirt. "Finn, I didn't anticipate you. I was in the area." He kept his voice even. "Everything all right?" Carter offered a polite nod. "Just reviewing some legal language on the new youth line." Steffy had questions. The explanation was plausible. Finn accepted it with a smile that felt brittle. Later, alone in his car, he revisited the scene. The tension had been too acute for contract language. Steffy's reply had been too fast, too defensive. He remembered of the nights she had returned late from the office claiming late meetings. He thought of the way she avoided certain topics, the way her phone lighted up with texts she never shared. Suspicion, once planted, flourished with quiet tenacity. That evening he waited until Steffy was in the shower and reviewed the call log on the joint tablet they used for the children's schedules. Nothing strange surfaced with her name. He felt a flicker of humiliation for even seeing, then a stronger spark of resolution. He was not the kind of man who invaded privacy lightly, but the alternative was watching his marriage dissolve under the weight of unspoken things. He closed the tablet and sat in the dark living room, listening to the shower run, trying to quiet the voice that kept whispering Carter's name. The following day he arranged to leave the hospital early. He told himself he simply wanted to surprise Steffy with lunch. In truth, he wanted to observe. He arrived at Forrester Creations without announcing himself and used the stairs rather than the elevator. On the second-floor landing he heard voices from the small conference room that doubled as a quiet workspace. The door stood ajar. He recognized Steffy's tone first, strained, even imploring. "I can't keep carrying this," she remarked. "Every time he looks at me I feel like the worst person alive." Carter's reply was softer, harder to detect. Finn edged closer, his pulse racing with the realization that while he was battling to preserve them, she had already crossed a line she had vowed she would never tolerate from anyone else.